Howareyanow, everybody. Thanks for stopping by the Half Stops. I'm your host, Jamel, and welcome to an impromptu photo walk brought to you by me. So, this is taking a 12-year-old look, or you could say this is also a 12-year-old review of my first camera that I ever bought way back then, the old Sony a500 or Alpha 500. For some reason, I just wanted to take and shoot the old Sony just out and about and see what I get out with it. And these images, I want to see if the images held up all these years, to see if the sensor's still good. Going back to a mirror system definitely was something that I had to get back and get used to again, just to remember how to compose and how to properly expose as well. So for some technicalities about it, I just want to say that I did have the Minolta 50mm 1.7 on it. So I shot everything in f1.7 1.7 just to grab as much light as I can, because I was honestly desperate. And so far, I think these photos came out okay. I'm not much of a tech specs guy. I'm definitely more of trying to use the camera and trying to do as much as I can with it as far as taking photos go. But for some of the the tech people out there, for an old camera such as this, the old Sony a500 came out back in 2009. Came out there with a 12.3 megapixel sensor, APS-C size, of course. It was an Exmor CMOS sensor, so this was during the time of the CMOS sensor transitions for a lot of camera brands and cameras in general. It was rocking the Bion's image processor. I think it might have been like the first generation of the processors. Didn't shoot video, unfortunately, so I was never really video centric in general, ironically, after making this video, but I definitely was missing out at the time. So yeah, this did not shoot any kind of video, all just straight images. It did have image stabilization, so they had their steady shot inside stabilization system that Sony adopted from Minolta. And it did have a TTL phase detection system with 9 points. Can you believe it? Working with 9 points back in 2009 or during that era. And we had an ISO range of 200 to 12,800. So I definitely wouldn't have recommended shooting at 12,800. Even 6,400. And of course, it was built around the Sony A mount, or the old Minolta and Konica Minolta A mount AF lenses. So originally, I was trying to aim for a forest preserve to just walk around it and maybe grab some nature shots or just some trees and stuff. But around mostly my area, they were all closed off. So it's probably due to the dusk rules or something that we have out here. So I ended up finding this random library just to park in, and not suspiciously walk around and grab a few shots of the surrounding area. There was a nice little field out there. I even found a random soccer ball out in the field, so I'd made sure to take a few photos of those just out of the randomness of it. But it was quite an experience. I ended up just going to two different places. I stuck around mostly around this library area because it was nice and kind of serene. There's also a barn up this hill that I was climbing up to, and just trying to get as much as I can when it comes to just grabbing any kind of photo I can grab, and trying to see if my composition skills or to test my composition skills when just walking around and just seeing anything I can to make a photo of. So yeah, for the photos, again, these were mostly a impromptu photo walk. So due to my timing of actually going out, I had a very limited amount of light, so I had to work fast and try to make as much photos as I can. So there's not a whole lot of photos here, but I feel like this is a good example of the capabilities of the camera, and see how much it can achieve with the amount of light I did have. So a little bit of history on this camera and myself is, so again, it came out in 2009. I ended up choosing Sony because I definitely was at a time where I was trying to pick my camera brands and try to be loyal to which one I wanted to go with. So I ended up going with Sony, and reasons for that I'll get into. But I did bought it back in Black Friday of 2010 at a Micro Center of all places. Now, what was my one major reason of buying the camera at the time? Admittedly, I'll say I did it because for a girl. She happened to, I guess, like the idea of me taking photos and the whole, photographer aspect of it. This is me back in high school, so. I think in 2010, this is, I believe I was probably a sophomore in high school. So, I'm trying to get, make a identity for myself and try to get girls. Eventually, I did start shooting for creative reasons after all that. That was, it was quite shortly after the whole girl thing, because I ended up falling in love with photography instead and just getting into such a creative, mode when I had my camera. But going back to my decision as to why I chose Sony, back then I watched an old Gordon Lang video, specifically a review on this camera, and I don't remember how many times I watched it, but it was a very compelling video. Gordon does an absolute amazing job at his videos regardless, but even back in 2010 or maybe 2009 when the video was first uploaded, it was a very compelling video, and I was really sold on the idea of owning the a500 at the time. One of the other reasons I had was also that Micro Center had this Sony display that had, all the lenses and just, the whole orange bit and everything, and it was always attractive to me whenever, during my frequent trips to Micro Center in general. So when it came to like big DSLR cameras, I always assumed Sony was like one of the top guys. Looking back on it now and looking at it today, Sony is one of the top guys right now. I didn't, no one really thought, but even back then, I did think that Sony was one of the, the big competitors between, amongst like Canon or Nikon at the time. And I just was really drawn to Sony, not just for the the aesthetics and the whole Alpha line thing, but even at the time, after watching Gordon's video, Sony at the time seemed like ahead of the game when it came to like features and functionalities of the camera, and using it after all this time, it really was quite ahead of its time. When it came to trying to appease to even like an advanced photographer. I was an amateur, but the amount of options I had from that camera and the amount of functions I could utilize with it was it wasn't too overwhelming, but it was enough for me to understand how cameras like these did work and how I could utilize such functions to create great photos. So after I bought the camera, eventually I started buying the lenses. I had I ended up buying a 55-200 Sony lens. That was the alien lens, and then I finally settled on buying a Minolta after finding out the mount compatibility, the Minolta 50mm f1.7, and ever since I bought that lens has been glued to this camera the entire time. So, and I know this focal length back and forth, the capabilities of this lens, how the focus works and everything. I had that 50 millimeter on my camera the entire time, and I can't ever see this current camera without that lens attached to it. So, granted, when I start getting the once I have the 70-210, maybe that'll stick around to the camera a little bit, but it is a bit unwieldy, so the 50 does give it a nice little compact advantage to it. So, but I definitely want to start shooting with that lens a lot more once it starts coming in. Maybe I'll make a video of it, we'll see. But Eventually, I did end up crossing into the mirrorless territory after university, so that was about 2016. But ever since, I still never sold any of my lenses or that camera specifically. Everything was still in the same camera bag, and every now and then, even though it wasn't my main shooter after 2016, I always brought it out every now and then and just shot with it. And just whenever I felt inspired, in a sense, I always wanted to go out and shoot with it. I even lent it out to a friend one time whenever he was getting into photography or even just media work in general. So I thought of that thought that camera would have been a great stepping stone for any beginner, really. So I hope you all enjoyed the video. Shooting with this old Sony really brought me back to my roots as a photographer. I mean, granted, it is my first camera, so with the combination of nostalgia and I guess using old techniques and using an older piece of kit to create images that I would try to create today, it really gave me some insight and perspective again. But even though I am a mirrorless shooter now, I'll still never sell this camera. One, it was my first ever real camera, so the history with me is irreplaceable. And in a world of Sony A7s ruling the world, this piece of kit kind of reminds me of Sony's upbringing, and it's a pretty good historical piece of kit, I guess. I definitely had high hopes for Sony. Spoiler alert: even though I'm a mirrorless shooter, I'm actually not a Sony mirrorless shooter, or even a Sony shooter anymore. So, but I still follow up with their development and see what they're doing with their camera line. And I never would have thought they've just step up into the industry and just become one of the leading brands when it comes to their photography equipment. So, hope to see you all back for more. Hit the bell if you want more, subscribe to wait for more, and as always, thanks for stopping by, and go grab your next great shot.